Let's talk to Saad, the pronouns he, him, calling in from Miserly Iguanas. That's so stupid. Who has questions about abortion. Let's talk to you, Saad. You're on the line with Forrest and Erika. How are you doing today?
Yo, how's it going, Forrest and Erika? Thank you so much for having me.
That's
It's
going
better
really
now
well.
that you're here.
This has now become a science and atheism mukbang. I'm glad you're here for it.
Yeah. Well, how have you guys been dealing with? I mean, if this is gonna make you feel good, I just want you to know that I voted for Trump and I regretted it. So,
Bit late for that now.
I wish that made me feel better. It doesn't actually. I mean, I'm glad you've had the change of heart, but it's one of those things where it's like I gently and with great, platonic affection, too little, too late, my friend. But I do want to argue with you about abortion. So tell us your perspective on that.
Mhm. Honestly, like I feel like I was raised religious and had all the religious viewpoints, and slowly but surely, kind of like changed my view on a lot of stuff. Creation, transgender people, all that stuff. But one thing that I've stayed like the same is abortion, and I'd love to have like a scientific discussion about it because honestly, it just literally feels like another person in that whose life is being ended. And I'm like really having trouble seeing it any different way.
I think that's a good place to start. Gosh, I mean, so my perspective on this, of course, I actually, while I was at the gym today, I did listen for a little bit to your show with Paul yesterday, and there was a topic very similar to this, and I thought you hit some really good points along that. I don't know if
we
you
have
want
the
to
guy
start
from that call waiting on the line right now to talk about something else.
Oh, really? Oh, wait, yeah. Okay, yeah. Oh, I think that's actually going to be a good one too. I hope they stay on. Do you want to start this, or do you want me to? How do you? Because I feel like you did a good job laying out the starting point last night. Last night.
Yeah, I think it's always best when we're talking about abortion to have two men have the discussion first. And so, like when we when I think, Saad, if we were to agree with you, let's say I just grant you entirely that this is an actual another living human being. And I give this person full rights and full autonomy and everything that I would associate with any other human being. That doesn't change my stance at all. That anybody with a uterus can decide who gets to live in that uterus. And so bodily autonomy goes both ways. If I say this, baby, this from the moment of conception, or the moment you even think about it, is a completely full formed human being, that doesn't change the fact that you get to decide who lives in your body and who uses your body for resources. So the example that we gave yesterday was that Erika's talking about was kind of a really just ad absurdum. Just take this to like the most insane possible place to really make sure there's no way out and there's no confusion about what's going on. Just if Erika shares my blood type, and I'm in, I need blood, I'm in renal failure, whatever it may be, and I were to plug a needle into her arm and start using her body to filter into mine, she has the right to pull that tube out and say, you're not doing this shit. It doesn't matter if it kills me. It doesn't matter if she has to kill me to do it. She has the right to protect her body and her autonomy. So even if I grant you your premise that any fetus at any age, no matter what, before they're born, is a literal human being with every right in the world, it changes nothing for me. I would love to hear your response to that.
My response to that, and that's an argument that I was honestly happy with for a long time. And just to be clear, I'm actually pro-choice. I'm sorry, because I do, at least in the United States, because I do believe that even with all my arguments, there is no maternal care, there is no maternal leave, there is no. So you literally are asking of women to, to take a toll that you're not asking anyone else to. So the ethics of abortion. Yeah. So I just want that out of the way, but that we do sacrifice a lot of our rights for the sake of our children. My question is, why is bodily autonomy kind of a special kind of right that cannot be infringed upon, as opposed to, I don't know, financial autonomy, because you do have to provide for your children.
I would immediately say that it's because bodily autonomy is not the same as personal responsibility. And that saying financial autonomy, finances is a social construct, money is a social construct. These are things that we made up. We didn't invent your body, and we didn't invent human rights for you to have the right on who you have sex with, whether or not you use contraception, what your future holds. So comparing the two is not really a appropriate thing to do. Erika, you were saying something that was probably way more important.
It really, I don't really know that it was. I'm of the perspective that this is something that involves like the legality of abortion. While it it certainly involves people with uteruses far more. It involves everybody. I think everybody should obviously be able to have a discussion about it. So please don't give me priority just because I happen to have a uterus. But what I'll add to this is like, I think that it's different because it's something that's taking place in your body, and it's something that is potentially directly dangerous. Pregnancies and pregnancy complication, more often than people ever give them credit for, can be super dangerous to people who are pregnant in general, and they can be dangerous quite suddenly. And so this is something that it's not like you're asking somebody to take on a financial responsibility that you may be able to get some help with, and maybe sometimes it's hard and maybe sometimes it's not. If you're forcing somebody to take on a pregnancy, you're basically saying you're on the hook for better or worse for 9 months. And it may kill you, and it may irrevocably change your body, the way that it functions, being in constant pain, issues with incontinence, things of that nature. And oftentimes, at least in some of the states in the South, at least at present, these laws are draconian enough that they are requiring that regardless of the circumstances of the pregnancy in the first place. So it's effectively an additional punishment after rape or incest for a lot of people. So I think just on a broad sense, because I know we're not really talking about those exceptions, we're talking about just like the morality, I guess, if you will, of abortion in general. I make the distinction myself on this. Like something that's pretty important to me is like the nature of personhood, right? I'm never going to sit here and have a conversation and say to somebody that life doesn't begin at conception. Of fucking course it begins at conception. That's what being alive is, right? But life isn't the only thing that's important here. Personhood is when something becomes, like human. It's when we give it the rights that we give human. So I think deciding when that happens is kind of pivotal to how we, if we even do, legislate something like abortion. Because there's just, the classic example that you hear time and time and time again is that it's like you take any of these people who are, vehemently pro-life and you stick them in a burning fertility clinic and say you can save 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 test tube zygotes, or you can save one human child. And every single one of them is going to save the human child, like the born 9-month-old or a toddler or a 10-year-old or whatever. And it's because we all recognize that there is a difference. The difficult part is telling when that difference takes place. And that's where I find that the interesting discussion takes place, right? The life at conception thing, I think that's super dumb. Like, I don't think it's defensible at all to say that conception is when personhood begins and that zygote has the same rights as the person carrying it. I think that's completely indefensible. And I think most people you talk to would say the same thing. But when you reach that you go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, my answer to that is that you will never have a consensus on what personhood or when personhood starts. So
no, you won't. You're right.
So
you'll also never have. Yeah, you'll never have a consensus on what a species is, or when life begins, like what actually counts as being alive, like when the difference between like a virus and the most simple prokaryote on the planet. And the reason for that is that life and biology is super messy, which is why when we have this discussion about abortion, you have to talk about it from a utilitarian standpoint. As unsavory as that seems to be for a lot of people, that's the only way to do it.
It's also important. I think your note about personhood is so important because even though it is this really fuzzy and difficult to define, if not undefinable thing, it is the thing that separates it because, like you mentioned, of course, life begins at conception. That's what life is. But also sperm and eggs are alive and the things they came from are alive. And so, like, no matter what, life is this unbroken, continuous chain. The question of when life begins fundamentally makes no difference. It's so meaningless when you really break it down. The actual question is, who gets to use whose body for how long? And if you're gonna say that somebody with a uterus must use it in this or that way, but you're not going to make organ donation mandatory, and you're not going to say that you could do the same thing at any time. I can't go take organs from my mother right now just because I need one as a 32-year-old man. Then you're granting, even if she did, yes, you are granting more rights to a fetus and a corpse than you give to any living person with a uterus, and that seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, I think the reason we do it is people try
let that
to say
fetus pay some fucking taxes first.
Well, they do it because they're like, well, a fetus is innocent, like it didn't do anything wrong. Like, but no one wants to actually say that. That's what's looming underneath the surface here. But I have never heard somebody who's like vehemently pro-life, like outright say, well, the reason is because babies are innocent. It didn't do anything, so it doesn't deserve this kind of treatment, and like you could make the same exact argument as the one that you just presented for us, right? Like, if you're trying to take my blood, I didn't do anything to you, right? Like, I haven't harmed you in any way. Why are you entitled to my blood, right?
So I love that, because the logical conclusion to that then is that it is a fitting punishment for crime to get parasites. You robbed a store, you get a tapeworm. You fucking killed a guy, you get a baby. Like, you're not innocent, therefore you have lost the ability to control your organs.
Well, and it's
I'm sorry, Todd. Go ahead, Erika.
Yes, Todd, go ahead. Go ahead, Todd.
No, I mean, I would just like to jump in now before I lose it. But that's actually, that was my next point, is that you're right. A baby, to Erika's point, she said a baby is innocent. So, but the thing is that, and you said, well, the mother is also innocent. Why does she need to carry pregnancy against her consent? And my answer to that is that the baby only exists because of the two parents' actions. Therefore, I believe the two parents are responsible for nurturing the baby until it can no longer be nurtured.
Okay, so then, when you say the word responsible, do you mean obligated?
Yes.
Okay, so then, follow-up question. If they are responsible to nurture this baby as long as possible, would you say that a mother is obligated, or should be obligated, should be forced, right? Because that's the word we're meaning, to go to college and to improve her career and to make more money and better financially provide for that children, both educationally, financially, nutritionally? Is that also a thing that should be forced upon her, or is it just poop it out and then do whatever?
No, but I don't understand the analogy.
Well, the analogy is, you're saying that because she was responsible for the production of this child, for the conception, pardon me, because she is responsible for the conception of this child, she is also necessarily responsible for the entire gestation and birth, and that this is all tied together. She bears this extended responsibility. So I'm asking you, how far does that responsibility extend? Because if just giving birth to a child is the end of it, she could be giving birth to a child in a crime-ridden, dangerous, toxic, pollution-heavy, underdeveloped area where this child is going to have a nasty, brutal, and short life that still falls under your framework of moral responsibility. So I'm asking, why, if it's responsible for her to give birth to this child, is she not responsible to give it the best possible life? Why is that not also part of the thing? Why does her bodily autonomy begin as soon as she gives birth?
She is, but the thing is that, and again, I'm just saying that it could be a stupid thing to say, but I think the child would rather live somewhere, or like live a terrible life than not live at all. And I know you cannot ask a fetus that question, but it's just a premise that I see from life, that life wants to live no matter what.
I super disagree. There are so many congenital issues symptoms, whatever, that syndromes, I should say, to where a baby's life is a few hours long and absolutely agonizing. And I think it is much, much, much better for that child to have never been born than to live for 5 hours of excruciating pain and then die. I don't think that's a moral position that it's possible to take. It is better for this child to suffer exponentially for their very brief life than for this child not to be born. As a bizarre and very expensive claim that you're making.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So
I think Erika wanted to say something.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to take this in a different direction, right? Let's say I take a trip to let's say I take a trip to Nairobi tomorrow, right? I get on a plane and I fly to Nairobi, and I want to go to Masai Mara down in the Rift Valley, where malaria is super common. And I don't bring my prophylactics because maybe I can't afford to buy anti-malarials this year. Maybe the prices spike like crazy. I can't afford to bring them, or maybe I forgot them, or maybe they lost my bag. There are a million different reasons maybe why I don't have my prophylactics and I'm not taking them. But I go down into the Rift Valley anyways. I think to myself, well, getting malaria is pretty rare. But I go down there and I catch malaria, right? Do I deserve to die from malaria because of that decision?
No, but you could. You still, you don't deserve to die. But it's a consequence.
Right. So pregnancy can be, it's a consequence of a risk, right? We take these risks all the time. Nobody deserves to die in a car accident just because they get behind the wheel of the car, even though they know that getting in a car accident and then dying is a risk that they take by getting behind the wheel. I think the same is true of sex and pregnancy, right? Like, I don't think that you can say that, well, pregnancy happened, you didn't intend it, but it happened, and now you have to bear the consequences of those actions. I don't think that necessarily follows, particularly since it takes two to tango with something like pregnancy, but only one party, pays the price on that one. Of course, that views pregnancy and birth as like a curse or something like that, as something negative. And I don't mean to paint it that way, because having a kid can be the most wonderful thing in the world, and it can be a gift for parents who want to have children. But it's one of those things that, like, you consent to getting behind the wheel of a car, you consent to a trip to Masai Mara, you consent to sex. You don't consent to dying in a car crash. You don't consent to dying of malaria. You don't consent to death by pregnancy. I think that this conversation would be a much different one if you couldn't suffer serious bodily consequences from pregnancy. If it was a massive inconvenience, no more, no less, this would be a totally different conversation that we were having at every level. But pregnancy is dangerous for a whole lot of people, and it's getting more dangerous the more relaxed selection is on things like the inlet for the pelvic, the width of the pelvic inlet, or various different types of preeclampsia or whatever. Like, all sorts of things are much more common thanks to the wonders of modern medicine. But that also means that pregnancy is way riskier for your average woman. And I simply don't think that the punishment matches the crime, to put it in crude terms.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. I know that artificial wombs right now are making strides, and they're getting better and better and better and better. Let's say we get to the point where artificial wombs are completely safe, are working perfectly, and they can host babies. And let's say we're in a utopic, super leftist society where the government takes care of your baby if you don't want them. Like, you go to these artificial wombs and they'll give them families, all that.
Hell yeah.
In that scenario, does abortion become immoral?
So,
I mean,
it's clear to yes, no, pardon me, no, it is not, and it is because, I'm sorry, Eric, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just the definition of the word abortion. You're fine. The definition of the word abortion is the termination of a pregnancy, not the killing of a child.
Well,
so if there's this situation where you have an artificial womb ready to go and whatever, and you can just plop that thing into a different situation and let it live some other way, and it can grow and whatever, fine. You still have the moral right to get it out of your body. And so terminating a pregnancy, even if it doesn't result in the death of this child and can be in a pod or whatever else, is still an acceptable thing to do.
So for me on that one, I might have a slightly different answer. I think it would be immoral in the same way that if I have a loved one and I've been born with 3 kidneys and I don't offer to give that loved one of my third kidneys that I'm not using, that is of no detriment of me to give, it's immoral in the same way as me refusing that move would be. Right? Because like if we live in this utopian modern world where like, oh no, I got pregnant, and it's a free government surgery that's like super laparoscopic and is easy and painless and whatever, and I can just do it. I personally, for me, from my subjective morality, I would say that if you move forward with an abortion at that point, that would be immoral because it has this opportunity to whatever live in this other environment. But I would also say that giving one of my 3 kidneys, not giving one of my 3 kidneys to somebody who needs it is immoral. That doesn't mean, in both situations, it's still my right as a human to make that move.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So something can be, something can be legally right but morally wrong. Yeah, really. You're collecting over there. Something can be legally right and morally wrong, and something can be morally wrong and legally right. So like those two things are separate in my brain, at least. I mean, like I get when people find the concept of abortion like scary or icky or whatever, right? I mean, like this is a part of what it is to be human in a lot of senses. Like a miscarriage can be for a lot of people who undergo them, especially if they want kids, it's a grotesque and gut-wrenching experience. It's painful, it's bloody, it oftentimes involves tragedy. Like the same is true of an abortion, whether it's medically induced or something that just happens along the way, so like a miscarriage, like I just said. But I think that we can recognize that and at the same time recognize that as a society, we are far better off having these things like safe, legal, and rare. And I wish that we still maintain that latter part because I think we could make them a lot rarer if we just had comprehensive sex education for people. Because like an abortion is not an easy procedure to undergo. It annoys me when conservatives pretend like this is something that's happening. Like, oh, whoops, time to go down to the shop and get my abortion because I'm having unprotected sex all the time. You know what I mean? Because that's not what's going on. This is something that is oftentimes really hard on the person who's getting it. Sometimes emotionally, always physically. But sometimes I would argue most of the time both. So I think that we have to have this conversation honestly instead of pretending that, it's no big deal or it's the worst thing under the sun and there's nothing more immoral. Because, newsflash, people have been giving themselves abortions since the dawn of human history, right? Like that's just what people do when they feel like they can't afford to have a child. So I think that the move here is obviously to keep this thing legal and give people the if you want to reduce them, you don't make them illegal, you give them the social structure and the governmental structure to actually like move forward with a pregnancy. And like you said earlier, I mean, you were dead on. It's like there's no maternity leave, there's no paternity leave, there's no system that's set up to help new parents, especially if they're already in a poor socioeconomic system.
Absolutely.
It's like how on earth can we expect people to be taking on a child without any form of support? It's crazy to me. And then, of course, that's separate from the conversation of the morality of abortion, which again, I would sort of co-sign Forrest on this. That it's like, well, we have to have a discussion about humanity and like when that starts, we have to personhood. And we have to have a discussion about bodily autonomy, and we have to separate morality from legality, and draw these arbitrary lines that we all know are arbitrary, but we do them because we must. We do them because it's a utilitarian society we're trying to build. It's what's going to make a better future for tomorrow. And in the meantime, we're trying to build these governmental structures, at least from my political perspective, where it's like we're trying to build these structures that can uplift parents and give them the means to have these kids if they want to have
them. Okay, yeah, I honestly, absolutely, like, if we're going to analyze this in a utilitarian way, you will always be right, because you're just right. There's data that show that societies that have safer access to abortion thrive better than those that do not. And like the discussion could just end there and not talk about personhood, no bodily autonomy, none of that stuff. But like you also said, Erika, there's also the aspect of like I genuinely think human beings are the greatest thing we've ever seen in the universe. And there's something really icky,
Girl, you have not seen frogs.
Just not moral about not allowing a conscience, a human, no matter what we are, I'm not exactly sure, to materialize because of, yeah, I'm not going to say selfish action, but because of, the decision of someone that, your whole existence is because they took some actions. And so it's just balancing these two, like, I'll say these two things that are not so much in contradiction with one another. They're almost like different. It's like what's better for society, but also it's still, maybe even if it's not a life, it's gonna turn into one. And like Forrest said, it's a continuum that doesn't stop. And so you don't know exactly where personhood starts. You have, we just, these are all conventions, So
Yeah, and again, I
yeah,
think.
probably.
Go ahead, Forrest. You were
Go
writing
ahead.
something down. I know you had something to say.
Well, just the last thing that you said there, Saad, really jumped out to me as like something that sounds at its surface very poetic and nice, but just scratch the pain a little bit is deeply problematic. You're saying that like human life is this wonderful, amazing, beautiful thing, and like yeah, it's a continuum, but like this is the potential for another wonderful, amazing, beautiful human life, and you just can't tolerate the idea that these humans, these potential humans, aren't being born. Is that a fair summary of what you're saying?
Yeah, and that's honestly my main issue with it.
Right. So then you should be requiring children, people to have children, and you should be forcing everyone to have sex to produce as many humans as possible.
But the continuum didn't start. Is the thing.
Why is what I just said not true? If you believe that humans are this perfect thing, and we need as many of them as possible, we shouldn't deny a human the right to exist. And we should be making as many as possible, and it should be legally required that you must have sex and you must have children.
No, because like I said, the life continuum didn't start. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
so then,
I get what you mean.
If stopping the life continuum means that we no longer enter into this ethical problem for you of not having these potential humans be born, then why aren't we mandating vasectomy? Why aren't we making sure that every man, every male, every anatomical male gets a vasectomy immediately after birth, and it can be reversed later on when they're ready to have kids?
But I don't have an answer for that. But again, like my answer is probably going to be it infringe on their bodily autonomy, which is going to be a funny thing to say.
Well, then let's pick something less invasive. Why don't we mandate contraception and also have comprehensive sex education? We teach everyone how this stuff works, and we give them easy access to contraception. Or in this extreme example, mandate you must use contraception. Everyone gets a birth control implant that can be removed. Something very non-invasive. Why don't we do that?
Because people should choose whether they want to have children or not.
Right. Which includes if they accidentally get pregnant and they choose they don't want to have children, they should be allowed to have an abortion, right?
But they already got pregnant. Is my issue with that answer.
So then what about here's the thing. You talking about this, this perfect human life it could live. It's very akin to that whole argument like that baby that you're aborting could have been the next Mozart, could have been somebody who cured cancer. Well, what about the mother? If she hadn't died during pregnancy or had her life permanently altered where she lost functionality in her body or was forced to be a stay-at-home mom taking care of her kids for the rest of her life and never got to pursue her dreams, she could have cured cancer. She could have been the next Mozart. She could have done something incredible. And so you're saying you're not interested in quality of life. You're not interested in productive life. You're not interested in happy life. You just want more human life. And that sounds like you should just make sure everybody's having kids all the time. And I don't understand how you're able to say we can stop the cycle, but we must do it by choice unless someone makes the wrong choice.
And to that end, right, like everybody should be required to be organ donors. And the second that anybody in your local region needs anything, like we should have mandated blood bank attendance every single week where you go to your local blood bank and give whatever blood that you can. I think what Forrest is saying here is that it's okay, let me back up. I empathize with your perspective, right? Like, again, and I was reading some of the comments in the chat, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. Like, it's okay to think about the process of abortion and be like, that, like, is sad or whatever. Like, you can feel sad about that. You can feel like it's icky because it's a anatomical process where you're going in and, like, especially if it's like a DNC or something like that, like, you're allowed to feel that way. I also think that it would be not great if somebody, like, again, in my example where I've got like my 3 kidneys, it would also be like not great. I don't like the idea of me not donating a kidney to Forrest if he needs one, especially if I've got the extra one or whatever. Like, you're allowed to have those perspectives. But the problem is, I feel like you're using that disgust, like, and I think that's what it is. I think it's a disgust response. And we're humans, we all have them, and oftentimes we can't control them. Like, you feel, an aversion to something like almost right off the bat. I think that that's fair, and I understand that. But I don't think is fair is to use that as a basis to say, okay, because I find this idea, sad or repulsive or whatever, that should inform the legality of it. Like, you said it best earlier in this conversation, where it was like, from a utilitarian standpoint, for the best life for the most amount of people, this shit has to stay legal, right? And we have to be vigilant in our sex education and access to contraceptives for people. That's the only way that you're going to reduce the amount of abortions. Because if you follow that logic that you presented us with, that's like, well, I find it repulsive because ... it's ending what could be. It's cutting human flourishing short. It's, whatever. Following that to its logical conclusion, Forrest is right? You should mandate everybody gets pregnant at 16 and has as many kids as possible until the day that they die. Everybody should have to be an organ donor. Everybody should have to be attending the blood bank once a week, because that's going to maximize the amount of humans in the world, which is why I think that what you just said there, and maybe I'm wrong on this is just the vibe that I'm getting, I don't think that that's actually what you think. I think that that's a retroactive explanation for the repulsion that you feel to the idea of an abortion, which, again, that's not the problem. You're allowed to feel that way. The problem is when it steps into the legality of the rights of other people. That's just my opinion.
I also, really quickly before you respond, Saad, I want to tell Erika that I really appreciate you validating my argument. I hate the sentence, Forrest was right, everyone should be forced to have children. That's a rough clip that somebody's going to make. Anyway, go ahead, Saad.
Hey, Forrest, your haters and your ops are going to clip it. That's going to be going around at the next Masonic Order meeting.
It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad.
Sorry, Saad, go ahead.
No, honestly, that's fair. I need to ponder on that, especially the argument on because you're right. That would require me to have a pretty, forced. Honestly, I guess the difference is that a baby, like, you're responsible for. No, actually, that's a bad argument. No, that's very fair. I'll just ponder on that for a minute. But before I leave, I would just maybe would have a question for y'all, and that's regarding transgender policy and going forward, because like I said at the start, I did vote for Trump, and it was based on what I thought was going to be not a very transphobic policy that will do it. I thought he was just pretty much going to ignore the transgender issue, which I was like, I'll
you never listened to the things that he said about it then. He was very, very clear about it.
He said other stuff that sounded very, very centrist. So, but beyond that,
he's good at saying a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my question is, how? Because the thing is that the transgender issue is so difficult to, because people think that oh my God, it's so obvious, a man cannot be a woman, blah blah blah, and that kind of talk, it just kind of brings the masses together, like everyone just kind of relates to that, like, oh yeah, of course, blah blah blah, and then that's how you get a very transphobic society, which is what I believe we do live in. Do you guys have any? And I think the Democratic Party has failed tremendously in addressing that, in educating people about transgenders and actually bringing forth the science. Do you guys have any sort of avenue for change? Because I truly do feel that societies are getting more and more transphobic. I work in public school, and the stuff I hear kid's saying is terrible, and
It's
it's
you work in a public school, so let's hope that the guy you voted for doesn't eliminate the Department of Education like he says he wants to. You're asking the exact same question that we should be asking about how do we convince people that climate change is real, despite decades and decades of very obvious data, and we can very easily say this is what it is, but it's a political topic, and so if you're a Republican, you don't get to say it's real. And same thing with evolution. You got a huge evangelical voter base on the right, so you don't get to talk about evolution. Same thing with the age of the Earth. You have a huge voter base over there, and now you have a huge transphobic voter base as well. Same thing with you can pick your favorite. You talk about race, talking about critical race theory versus DEI versus woke and all the other things that they use in place of the N-word. It's just a political thing, so it doesn't matter what these words actually mean or what the backing for them actually is. What matters is who is wearing the red or a blue colored tie while saying they do or don't like it. That's what it is. I'm not interested particularly right now in talking about the difference between politics and science or how to get science into politics or anything like that. It's just depressing. But my only advice is that we have to keep fighting. We have to become better and better science communicators. The fact that people still think that sex and gender are different things tells me that science communicators like me need to step our game up and do better. Vaccines, another great example. Dude, the transgender issue, as you were saying, is not a difficult one. Trans men are men, trans women are women, because sex and gender are fundamentally different things, and neither one of them is a binary, and they're not necessarily congruent. And this motherfucker right here is putting out an updated version of my Sex and Sensibility video next month, and you can learn all about it from a bunch of academic resources. And I can even right now explain further, but it's just not a particular issue. I think the cisgender issue is a lot bigger.
I want to add something to your side, because Forrest is here. I'll give you a better clip here. Forrest is right on all the stuff that he's just said about this cisgender issue. There you go. I found a lot of my family members are pretty conservative, and I've had conversations about trans people with them for the past couple of years, and I'll just share with you anecdotally what I've found works for me. The strategy that I've found works for me. It's a source methods thing. So when they say things like, you're turning your kids trans in school without your consent as a parent, your response should be, who's doing that? Where are they doing that? Can you please provide a source for me where they are transing the kids in school without parents' permission? Or is this something that you heard, on a conservative ad? Because inevitably they'll say, oh, I saw it on Fox, or I saw it on Breitbart, or I saw it on Tucker Carlson's Twitter show, or Elon Musk retweeted something about it. And inevitably, and I know this because I've gone down this exact path with several of these relatives, you will go down the way, and what you will find out is that in a health class on one lesson for 2 minutes, someone was like, yeah, you can be cisgender, you could be transgender. And this is when, your assigned sex at birth and your gender identity don't match. And then that's all they say.
Exactly.
And then that is what is causing the hubbub. So it's your job at being in public education, you're on the front lines, man. I commend you for that. I do. But I mean, your best bet here is to just challenge people when they say this, but not, and I know this sucks because it makes you angry. It pisses you off. You want to be combative. You want to be like, what the hell are you talking about? But you have to take a calm perspective because we're trying to win these people over, as gut-wrenching as it is, and as much as it feels like you're pulling teeth. You have to take a step back and you have to say, okay, let's break this down. Have you ever heard a trans person say that they think that we should trans the kids in school, right? Do you know any trans people? Where are they legislating transing the kids in school, right? Where are you getting this information from? And as you break it down with them, you introduce more and more humanity into the subject, where it's okay, well, I know a trans person who has had a lot of very rough days because of what's coming, and it's and appeal to their humanity a little bit. I have a friend of mine who's transgender, and they're quite scared because they don't have the ability to leave a southern state in the face of this administration, and it's that's going to impact them quite a bit. And it's when I've brought that story up to people that I know who are conservative, close family members, they'll be like, I didn't think of it that way. And you want to shake them by the shoulders and say, but it's your job to think of it that way. Your choices impact everybody. You know what I mean? You want to grab them and say that to them. But what you need to say is, okay, that's why these policies are actually harmful. That's why we have to take everything into consideration when we do things like vote or interact with other people. So my advice to you would be, when you encounter these people, if you have the heart, if you have the willpower, because God knows it's hard right now, but reach out to their humanity, question their sources, and know that you're not going to have one conversation that's going to change their mind. But if you get to know them, you just might be able to chip away at that a little bit. That's my experience.
You're so right.
Take that.
It is heart-wrenching, because it really feels like I am arguing humanity, and I need to be like calm about it a lot of the time. Like, yeah, let's calmly discuss whether these kind of people, or like these group of people, these whatever group of people, deserve basic human rights. And that always feels very weird. But you're right. It is. We have to do it this way, or it's not going to get better. It's just really sad when you see something like, again, and you guys talked about this before, but I think Nancy Mace is her name. She's the Congress member, Congresswoman, and you see her Twitter usage completely blow up, like triple her number of followers just by being transphobic.
Especially when you're on a transphobic platform, it's easy to get famous. Yeah. And so, and you have that picture of she's walking around putting the word biological, taping the word biological above the women's restroom. And and that is the thing. This person does not understand that sex and gender are different things. Man, woman, boy, girl, non-binary are gender terms. Male, female, intersex are sex terms. They are not necessarily congruent. They overlap a lot of the time, not all the time. Sex is a biological construct. Gender is a social construct. Gender changes from generation to generation, from society to society, from person to person, from day to day. It is not a situation where you can say, woman looks like this, acts like this, does X, Y, Z thing. It never works that way. It never has worked that way. And you've got a fringe pocket of loud assholes who are trying to pretend like this is the way that it has always been, when it just very clearly isn't. Because what they are doing, the same thing, the same way that lots of fascistic people work, is they are conjuring up a fake past to be nostalgic about. When in reality, trans people have always been here, have historically been recognized, have historically had great positions of power and authority and privilege and recognition. And now we have to sit here and pretend like, no, actually, it's always been man or woman, and man is XY and woman is XX, and there's nothing else ever forever. And that's just fucking dumb.
It's so dumb. And like, what fucking kills me is that they love to say you cannot define a woman, but their definition of woman never actually includes all women. Even if we're talking on the biological, just the biological female, they talk about, but I won't get into that. I feel like I've already.
Yeah, no, you're preaching to the choir. Also, to the person in the chat who says that we shouldn't believe the lies about Trump getting rid of trans and gay rights. Listen to what the motherfucker said with his own mouth. Like when he said on his own website that he is going to, on day one, make it law that the only genders recognized by the United States are male and female, and they are assigned at birth, therefore eradicating completely from legal and social status trans and intersex people. I swear, if fucking Trump supporters would just listen to the shit he actually fucking says, they would not be Trump supporters 80% of the time. That includes you, Saad.
He says contradictory shit. That's a lot of...
Because he's a lying liar, and he tells lies. Lying liars lie. That's what they do.
I had a conversation with a family member where I was talking about some of the stuff that might be coming down the pipeline, as I said at the beginning of the show, with like the Department of Education and climate change and stuff like that. My mom was like, "Where are you hearing all of this?" And I was like, "Well, I went on Agenda 47, because like it's the sanitized Project 2025. That's actually like the official platform." Mm-hmm. And my mom was like, "Oh my God, like I've never heard of this." And she was like, "Send it to me." So I did. And she was like, "Uh-oh." Like she immediately was like, "Why wasn't this being like, screamed from the rooftops?" And I had to be like, it was. A lot of people were sounding the alarm on this. But I don't know. Like, I think part of it too, and I think I will speak for myself, my own opinion here, right? Like, I think it is the responsibility of everybody who votes to be as informed as possible when they vote. I understand that that's not realistic, which means that it is the responsibility of the media, and that includes people like me and Forrest as science communicators in the alternative media landscape, to try to talk about some of this stuff as much as possible so that people can be informed. But needless to say, you know, we're in trouble. We're in uh-oh territory right now. Make sure you know get to know your neighbors and your friends.
I hope I don't see y'all in the front line. So I hope at least we make it out safely. I'd love to give a special shout out to Erika for helping me, you know, just like leave Islam a couple years ago. So appreciate you for that. And yeah, thanks everyone.
You, I'm so glad to hear that. Of course, I'm glad to help, you know, anybody trying to learn more about the world around us, and wherever that leaves you at the end of the day, you know, I'm happy to help elucidate things. So thank you for calling in.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all.
Take care, Zod. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we're in trouble.
Shit's real bad. Shit's real bad. But hey, productive conversations on the show today.
No, honestly, Forrest, I'm really happy with the conversations that we've been having. They've either been wonderful blood sports that we will clip to oblivion, or they've been productive conversations who genuinely want to learn more about subjects. And that's all I can ask for from the internet, to be perfectly honest.
Hey, what's up? I'm glad you enjoyed that clip of people talking to each other. I'm Jimmy, and this is Eric. And well, we'd really love it if you would support us. Where can they support us, Eric? Where would they do that?
You know, I don't know, Jimmy, because I don't have the notes on me right now.
This is too long. Like the outros have to be short. Patreon.com/call the line.